Hey, it's Sam, and I'm making this video today about something that is very important in many people's life who study astrology and who are into spiritual awareness, and that's remedies. Particularly in Vedic astrology, there's a lot of potential for remedies and alleviations of karmic suffering, and many times astrology students and astrology clients want to know, well, how can I help someone? I say all this stuff to them and I can see what's happening. How do you know which remedies to recommend? And what, it's often something like, which gemstone should I recommend? Because we've heard that's the one. It's a very tricky thing, and I'll just, it always comes up in my certification course. Students ask me this all the time because they start doing readings. I compel them to do readings, and then they're like, well, what mantras or what gemstones should I recommend? So first of all, let me just say, as it comes to recommendations, it's pretty tricky. And I don't care what anyone says. If someone's going to recommend any kind of mantra or gemstone or puja or whatever, you need to be careful. There is no hard and fast rules. And even recommendations themselves, you need to really introspect about what you're doing and if you want to do that. I used to do all kinds of remedies when I first started. I'd give people mantras and gems and herbs and all kinds of stuff because it was connected with the tradition, and I thought, okay, I'll let them know about this. And I had a good gem dealer that I would deal with and I would refer people to. He would, there was a commission that he would give. I never used to spend the commission. Even if they would give it to me, I would take and donate it because I didn't really want the money. Not that it's wrong. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just that personally, I didn't want that part to be on me. But I stopped doing it, and here's why. Because after a while, I realized when I started seeing clients over and over again, when you start getting a lot of repeat business, you get feedback. And I started hearing in more than one person this kind of maybe guilt that they didn't buy the gem or some other thing. And some of these gems are expensive, right? And they'd be like, oh, the last reading was so helpful, I wanted to get another one. No, I didn't buy the gem. I know I should have bought the gem, and I knew it. And they were like, felt like they disappointed me because they didn't buy the gem, or they didn't do the herbs. They didn't do this stuff. And it weighed on them. They felt like they had let me down, or that it's one more thing they can't do right. And I just heard all of the negativity. Not that they didn't blame it on me, they blamed themselves. And I was like, do I really want to do this? First of all, am I 100% certain that this recommendation is really going to help the person? Do I really know? I have to say, no, I don't know. And I don't. Do I really know that those gems are going to help them? Do I really know this puja is going to work? Do I really know that these herbs are going to help? No, I actually don't. And do I believe it? Probably a little bit. It's not going to hurt, maybe. But it's hard to really know because, for example, you give someone a gem, and I started to hear and notice the psychology behind it. Basically, this sort of Western Prozac or something. I have this difficult time coming up. What gem can I get to help me through it? Give me the gem that I put on the finger that makes the bad stuff go away, that's going to take away the karma. I heard there are gems that'll take away the karma, or mantras that'll take away the karma. Or I can move here and it'll take away the karma. Everything is this kind of idea. And it's this illusion that there's some kind of passive thing that you can do, or get a puja to take away the karma. And that's not how it works. Your karma is your karma, and karma just means your actions. It means the actions you've performed before, and how they have shaped your mind and your viewpoint now, and what you expect to show up the next time you're in that field. The next time that lesson comes up for you in whatever measure, this is what you're used to doing with it. So this is what you're used to seeing. And because your mind is a projector, you project your Saturn and Mars and Jupiter and Venus onto things. This is how you see it. That's what the chart is. It's a portrait of your biases and the ratio of how you see things based on your karma, your past actions, and what those actions say about your way of seeing things and what you're likely to do. So that's what it is. Nothing takes it away, quote. Now, of course, there are things that minimize the negative quality, the problems that we create, but I don't know if gems do or not, to be honest with you. On some level, they said that they increase the, quote, capacity to act. There are some people who say, oh no, they always clear things up. They're nothing but positive. They do nothing but balance if it's the right gem. All this stuff. Again, people can say this stuff, sorry, but I don't know if it's really true, and I don't think anybody really does. I'm sorry, but it's certainly not a pat, absolute, cosmic law of the universe that it's going to be that for everybody. I'm sorry, but I just don't think it is. Things that I think, so I started, when it comes to remedies, you know, I have a long history in yoga. I used to teach yoga. I taught yoga for, 7-8 years, like 6-7 times a week. I know that yoga, asanas, pranayama, mantra, I know this works. I know it. No question. You move your body a certain way, you breathe a certain way, you sit, you introspect, you meditate, you close the eyes, you balance the energy moving through the body and mind. You are going to get more insight into everything. This is not just this is a yoga Ayurveda principle. Again, we can focus on our doshas in Ayurveda and cure it and balance it with diet and all this stuff. We can do all that. But you know the one thing that balances all the doshas? A regular yoga practice. You want to balance all the doshas and make it simple? Do a regular yoga practice. Now, it's a little more complex than that, but not much. I mean a yoga asana practice that's conducive with your dosha, right? If you have an excess pitta, you wouldn't want to be doing Bikram Ashtanga hot yoga every day. That's kind of vitiating your Vikruti too far toward fire. I said a balanced and healing practice conducive to your dosha. That will balance them, a yoga practice, and maybe cooler breath or something like that. The point is, I stopped all of these bewildering remedies, and I'm not even getting into things like, give sesame seeds to a black dog on a Saturday under a milkwood tree, or some, feed a nun on Friday, white rice and ghee, or, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things either, but I'm not even talking about those kinds of ideas. I just stopped all of that kind of, especially things that confused people, which those kinds of remedies are. Drink water from a blue glass, from a blue jug, from a blue pitcher. Do this. I'm not saying they don't work, okay? Especially if someone understands why they're doing it, it could very well be effective. But the thing I just said is the important thing. If someone understands why they're doing it, that's the point. The point of the reading is to explain to people what's happening so they understand it. This is your consciousness, this is what your consciousness sees, this is how your consciousness is responding. That's what karma is. It's your mind. Your mind is karma. You want to know what karma is? It's your mind, how your mind sees things. The aggregate of that is your karma. Nothing else, nothing's outside of that. How you see things and how you keep seeing it. To elevate the karma is to understand the highest potential of that thing that you're seeing through your limitation. And the focal point of karma at any given time is the dasha cycle you're in. You're getting mostly that karma, and the sub-cycle, the secondary, and it's being greatly affected by the transits in the sky when they get really acute. So, in any situation, let's just say, for example, we have a Mars, because that's always one that's sort of tricky. We're getting a lot of Mars energy. Let's say we're in Mars Dasha. Let's say it's Mars, let's say it's Mars Rahu or something, right? Or let's say Mars Saturn, let's say. And it's a lot of cruel energy. It's harsh. It's just hard to feel good no matter what's going on. One of them is a functional benefic. One of them is a functional malefic. They're both cruel. They're not friendly with each other. It's just... So, the kinds of remedies that you would recommend, that I would recommend, have to do with strengthening the qualities, the innate qualities of those energies. What's the power of that? Well, the power is they're both, let's say, tamasic, right? Which is about discipline, power, control. Mars is the tamas of discipline, Saturn of commitment. So any Mars-Saturn cycle, I already know. One of the great things to do is they need to literally get focused on some kind of spiritual sadhana. Not just once in a while, but get very disciplined and persistent. These are the qualities of Saturn and Mars. And you can look at the chart to see the houses they're in and other nuances to help to do that. Let's say one is really weak. Let's say one is very weak, which let's say it's Saturn. Let's say Saturn is really weak in the natal chart, and Mars is kicking ass. And it's Mars-Saturn, so the Saturn part is just like not able, it's just getting destroyed. Which means when Saturn is really weak, the person doesn't have a lot of structure. It's hard for them to stay focused on a routine. They give up and they change very quickly. They can't commit, right? Mars might be very disciplined, but it's disciplined in a way that's erratic. Because Saturn, when it's weak, we're erratic. We can't stay consistent, right? We give up. Easily, we're overwhelmed by the problems and the unpleasantness. One of the ways we can see that often is a person, for instance, they don't have a good relationship maybe with food. Maybe they indulge. This is just an example, not necessarily, but let's say that's what happens. One of the things that appeases Saturn is to eat less food, right? Eat green food. Make sure to rest more. Make sure to rest and be simple. And certain things help to appease that which, for instance, spiritual practice related to service. Literally service. So instead of brooding over our depressed state and how sad we are, which is also a weak Saturn, we're unable to endure the hardship and the unpleasantness, we sit there and mope and act like a baby. Instead of being mature, the way to switch that is serve. You need service. Now, nobody wants to hear this. These are real remedies, though. These are real things that we need to do. Telling them to get a gem or get a puja, like, it's just, all right, it might work this much, but what this person needs to do is take their physical body and their presence and do something different with it. Instead, we get these remedies and, like, doesn't change anything. It just costs the person money, costs the person emotional capital, because they also often don't do it. And maybe they won't do this either. But at least they're going to know that there is something in their power. Or they'll spend the money and nothing changes. They'll get the puja and they're like, I don't know if it even really did anything. But you bring it down to something that is an activity related to that planet. It can also be like a mantra. Like the thing to make the Saturn energy powerful is Shiva energy. It's about the power of solitude, the capacity to endure stress and difficulty, for example, right? So, when you talk about these things, this is what I call remedies. These are the things I tell people. Like, this is what this time is for. Or let's say it's the other way. Let's say Saturn's really strong, Mars is really weak. So Saturn is trying to commit to something, but the Mars is really weak. Well, then again, Saturn and Mars in some ways have a similar kind of, they kind of show up a little bit in a similar way. Mars would then be kind of undisciplined and kind of random, rather than having a lot of strength, even like physical strength. The person they're engaging in like arguing and frustrations, and they're not showing up courageously to meet challenges. And so Saturn is trying to commit to something, let's say, but what's behind it, what he's trying to commit to, is something that's just undisciplined, unclear, weak. So then we need to strengthen the Mars, right? So rather than It wouldn't be service to others, because again, the Saturn remedy of service is so that you open up and you extend beyond your sadness and pain. Problem with Saturn is we get overwhelmed by the sadness and pain, rather than taking that as a catalyst for saying, okay, I realize I did this, I was wrong, and it makes us more sensitive. We become overwhelmed. So when you serve, you're serving people who need help, and you become sensitive to their pain rather than focusing on yours. With Mars, the problem is weakness. Literally, discipline is the inability to do the right thing right now in the moment to make us strong and willing to suffer in the moment for our principles. Like to get up early and meditate and do yoga. Literally, that's the remedy for Mars, by the way. Do something physical so that you're physically strong, so you're willing to feel that physical fire moving through your body, like, yes, I'm strong. And that builds on itself. Like, I can do this to overcome a challenge, to overcome an obstacle. It's great for Mars. What we tend to do, though, when he's weak, is the obstacle is you. You're the problem because you said something I don't like, and I don't like you, and you're arguing with me, so I'm going to argue with you. And that's the stupid obstacle we overcome, rather than overcoming our own weakness. So again, the remedy for Mars is that kind of activity. Like, start slow, and but try to get up early. Just try to get up early and try to, just move your body. Get some fire moving through your body, and try to be disciplined for a few hours or something like that. I mean, for 10 minutes a day. Just try to build it up. And you reconnect them with their vision and say, can you see how if you were a little bit physically stronger, you'd have more belief and more courage? Well, you don't have the courage now to meet these obstacles. That's why you're feeling like you just want to shrink. Right? Let's say something like Venus. Venus, let's say Venus is weak. Sometimes a planet's too strong and you want to calm it down. Sometimes it's weak, you want to pump it up. Let's say Venus is weak. Literally, let's say like Virgo, because that's the sort of stereotypical place of debilitation. But let's say it's got Saturn or something that's making it so when we experience happiness, it doesn't make us very happy. We're critical of others. When we get happiness, it's never good enough, because this is the problem with Venus. This is why Venus stereotypically is exalted in Pisces, where anything can make us happy. Everything makes us happy. Everything's just so beautiful. Right? Elevates Venus. When it's not, nothing makes us happy. So a person will have a hard time feeling good, just enjoying life. And that's sad. So what would you do? Well, consciously, make sure to get fresh cut flowers. Maybe every other day. Doesn't have to be every day. They're not going to do it every day. Just have flowers, right? Burn incense, right? Activate the energy in your life, right? Tell them to consciously bring this thing into your life. You have to consciously bring it into your life because it's not consciously there, right? Stop wearing black and romanticizing all of your disconnect, and wear some pastels. Wear a dress once in a while. Wear a skirt. Take off the ripped jeans and t-shirts because you're such a tough girl, right? And bring some beauty into your life, right? Let's say it's Mercury. Mercury's weak, okay? Then the mind is everywhere. And again, these are, let's say that it's overstimulation. Then it's like instead of overstimulated, you need to connect with something that's uplifting. First you need to slow the mind down, and you need to connect it and focus it on something like, you would say something like mantra, or reading some pure, simple books like Buddhist or something like that. Again, everything is unique, but understanding the nature of the way the planets operate, you can suggest remedies that are holistic and that activate the person's intention rather than some gem or some this or that. Again, I'm not saying those things don't work on some level, especially if someone's intention is around it. I know a lot of people that do yoga a lot, and they say a lot of mantras, and they're connected to all this stuff. In that case, if they especially say, they're into Ayurveda and they really worship gems and they see that as a whole thing, well, that's a whole different ballgame, because then their intention is already focused on that, right? You're not just bringing something out in the world, say, put this gem on your finger, and they're like, well, okay, what's that all about? That doesn't matter. Or, again, as a Westerner, many Westerners, they don't know anything about all those gods and deities. You tell them to do these pujas, they don't know what that is. It's outside of their culture. And again, the effect is these things can then sort of lord over people. Again, the thing that I realized very early, and when I got this feedback I stopped, was I didn't want astrology to be one more thing lording over this person that they don't really understand. I don't know, he told me to do this, wear this gem, and I don't even really know why. And frankly, I hear this all the time. I hear this all the time. And it's not because astrologers are bad people or they're damaging people. Everybody's doing their best. Everybody is doing what they think is right. I get it. Astrologers who give all these remedies and sometimes they don't even tell people why. They just say, oh no, do this, do this, do this. They don't even explain it. They think they're helping people, and perhaps they are helping people. I'm not saying they aren't. But to me, it's nowhere near as beneficial as explaining the nature of the karma to the person in their mind, because we're all living in our mind. And then talk about those things with them. See, here's the thing too, I'll say this last thing is getting a little long, but astrology has changed. Vedic astrology has changed, especially even more than Western astrology, because Western astrology is actually kind of, I'm not saying it's experienced its highest renaissance, but it's continued to really change and bring in a whole lot of new stuff and all. Vedic astrology is still very much connected to the lineage of India 2,000 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, right? 1,500 years ago, a lot of it. A lot of the books that we read are from either like 400 to 600 AD with Brahmahira, Brihajatika, and those, or like even 1200, 13, 14, 1500 AD with like Mantreshwara, Paladipika, and some of these other later ones. So this was India in 1500. And yeah, there's all these remedies to do. But you've got to put it in context, in the social context. Back then, the astrologers were kind of like the priests. You didn't have these yoga masters everywhere. Nobody knew yoga. It's not like nobody knew it, but it wasn't like asana practices and all this stuff that we do in this world. These were poor people. Most of them were not educated. They didn't read. They weren't studied people like we are. They didn't know enlightened deities. They didn't have access to the Vedas. They didn't know anything about astrology. They didn't study any of this. They lived in a village, and the guy who was the main leader, Brahmin, the kind of figurehead, the one that studied the sastras and the scriptures like the Bible, the one who knew all of that, was the astrologers. That's what they were. And they were literally like the connection between the people and their karma, and they're like working in the fields and being these, in these other castes where they're not educated. And the astrologers would look at their chart, oh yeah, okay, so you have this, so you do this, you do this. They couldn't explain to these people, well, Shani is all this stuff that I just explained. They wouldn't explain this to people. That's not what they did. They said, oh, you have this Chandramangala yoga. Okay, that's good for money. Moon Mars, okay, that's good for money. But you also have, Kalasarpa yoga. You better wear this gem because you might get bitten by a snake. This stuff is in the books for a reason. There were snakes in India. We got to adapt that now. We're talking to people on a different level. And astrology students or astrologers, some traditional ones, they can't adapt the language to what we're doing or the practices to what we're doing now. And by the way, some of those practices, I've been in parts of India, it's still very rural. And some of those they're still appropriate to feed the cow, sesame seeds on a Saturday, whatever. It's appropriate in certain examples. To somebody in New York City in the US, you don't give them that remedy. And you explain to them, because they live in a world that's very different. It's not better, by the way, it's just different. The karma is different of someone in this culture. So the remedy, again, someone in India, the whole thing about a gem and all this makes a lot of sense to them, perhaps, maybe. I mean, maybe not actually, but it might. But in the West, again, it's just a little bit out of sync. And the point is that even now you still see, and I know this especially from India and astrologers that are still in India, there's still that approach that the astrologer's job is to help the person get rid of the curses in the chart and the blemishes. And astrology itself is the science of doing that, of seeing the sins of the person, helping them get over the bad times so they can get the good times. And here's the stuff, here's the gems, do this, do that. And they don't bother explaining to the people why they would even tell them to do this. They see themselves as, this is what I do, this is what astrology is. It's to help you, avoid your son getting killed by a snake, or other things that aren't as drastic, but just... So that approach to remedies is still there. And so, I'm saying I'm making this video, with all caveats and due respect to wherever someone is practicing astrology. I'm mainly talking to Westerners who come to YouTube, who listen to what I say, who want to understand more nuances of karma as evolutionary forces and the planets as all of that. And by the way, frankly, I'll just say this too, I have a lot of Indian clients because of this, because I speak to them this way. Because India is becoming a very educated country. Many sophisticated Indians who are educated, they hear those kinds of bewildering statements and these remedies, and they're like, come on, man, this isn't 1600 in a jungle, right? I'm educated, I've gone to school, I've learned things. You need to explain something to me. You can't just sit there and go, oh, bad thing, wear this gem, do this, get this puja, and all that. It doesn't resonate. So in a sophisticated, again, I'm not judging it, because there's one of the problems with our sophisticated mind is we're just all over the place. There's something to be said for the simplistic beauty of the life they live, and the devotion to say, okay, and to put on the gem and actually maybe have it be like, ooh. But their lives are simpler and slower. It's no less connected or spiritual. I'm not under any illusions that that's true. They're just as connected and spiritual. But those aren't people that I'm interacting with, or that we're probably interacting with. So when you see this disconnect. When people ask me for those kind of remedies, I'm saying, wait a second, that's not congruent with the life you live. Your mind wants an answer. And if I just tell you to put something on and I don't explain it, you're not going to get anything from it. You're going to be wondering why. I don't know, I just put this thing on, I don't really know why. If I explain to you what's happening, do this, connect you with practices that get you doing it, and that to bringing that in your life in an active way that you validate, you understand. You say, yeah, you're right, that is what I do. I'm just, walking around in black clothes with the blinds shut. Okay, get some pastel clothes, get some flowers, burn some incense, and stop complaining that nobody likes you when you're sitting there pushing everybody away. So actively bring the Venus into your life. Maybe someone in a village, it's a whole different. Wearing the Venus gem and saying a mantra to Lakshmi, and it does the job, because it's a different world. So this has gotten long. I didn't plan to speak for almost a half an hour, but it's a very interesting and deep subject. And, we always have to be looking for ways to make the practice modern and real and still retain that integrity, because it's the same energy. It's not different. It's just a different application. Just like, and I'm not going to go off on a long riff about this, but just like many people come and they don't even have resonance with Hindu deities, but they actually worship like Western deities. Like, I tell people to say mantras to like Zeus and Thor and stuff, not say mantra to it, but that's the deity, okay, that's the one. It's just Jupiter, it's just Saturn. Om Zeusay Namaha, Om Thorave Namaha. No, I don't know what the mantra is for Thor or Zeus, but you know, still the same energy. And usually I'll guide people, and I have seen this, not to be facetious, but I have seen this where when I ask people what deity they like, I had someone said Zeus, Thor, these are two. You know, you get Kuan Yin, you get, you know, Mother Mary. It's not hard to say Mother Mary. That's actually the moon. And you might look at the goddess Lakshmi, very Mother Mary type energy, right? Someone Thor, right? Thor is pretty, you know, Thor, Zeus, these big Western, you know, Greco-Roman gods, they have a strong connection to Shiva, but Thor, you know, Thor is also related to Jupiter, and there's a Ganesha quality to it, especially some of the stories. So, we'll leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it.